6 in the morning. And then we heard a plane come over, and in Manhattan, you don't hear planes too often, especially loud ones.
Well, William Rodriguez claims to be the last man to have been saved from the bombed World Trade Center in September 2001. And he says the events of that day will be etched in his memory forever. He was a maintenance worker in the building in which nearly 3,000 people perished. Rodriguez helping to save the lives of hundreds of his co-workers and other civilians. I spoke to him earlier.
20 years after 9/11 is still an open wound. 20 years after, I relive 9/11 every single day. It's nothing that it can be erased from the memory of the survivors. As I am the last survivor of the World Trade Center, the last person that came out of the towers when it collapsed, the person that saved hundreds of people on that day. I had the only master key that opened all the doors. So what I saw is probably worse than what regular survivors probably saw at that time, because I had to go and try to rescue floor by floor people that were hurt, imagine that you had a desk right next to a window. All that window, that glass shattered, and people have glass encrusted in their face and their arms. I can remember blood everywhere, shoes everywhere, because everybody was running. The screams, the one thing that never leaves my mind is the screams of horror of people that were stuck inside of the passenger elevators, the lifts. They were basically dying there because nobody could help them because they were between floors. All these horrible, dantesque memories of what happened on that day, I relive them every day because, number one, as the last survivor, as the leader of the victims here in New York, as one of the few survivors that actually speak to the media, and on top of that, because my house is full of memories of 9/11. Look at this. This is a piece of the towers from the rubble. I have it right here.
Wow.
Behind me you can see the vest that I had on once I got pulled from the rubble. The building collapsed right on top of me. So, to survive something so tragical and so intense, it just marks you for the rest of your life.
If you can take us back to the morning of September 11th, 2001. By all accounts, a really beautiful morning on that day.
It was a beautiful day. It was election day in New York. It was a clear sky. There was no clouds or anything. As a matter of fact, I woke up late. I didn't want to go to work. I went straight to the North Tower, to the basement number 1 of the North Tower. The building has 6 sub-levels of basement, B1, B2, all the way down to B6. And at 8:46, while we are in the basement, there's 14 people, new people that didn't even know the building. They were vacation replacements. All of a sudden, we hear, boom, an explosion, very loud, very powerful, that lifted us up. The walls cracked, the false ceiling fell on top of us, the sprinkler system got activated, water started spewing everywhere, the fax machine fell on the floor, screaming, everybody's screaming. I thought one of the generators blew out from the mechanical room because it lifted us up. And when I went to verbalize it 6 to 7 seconds after, we hear, bah! All the way on the top of the building, 2 different events. And all of a sudden, the building started to shake, and through the hallway that led to the office, a man came in running saying, explosion, 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 hands extended, and what appeared to be clothing hanging from the top of the fingertips. As he get closer, we started screaming in horror. We realized it wasn't clothing. It was his skin was pulled from under his armpits and peeled off on both arms, and he was hanging. This guy was burned 33% of his body, a black guy named Felipe David. Felipe David has this part of the face was hanging, and I was like, don't move. He was in front of the lift, and I said, don't move. I'm going to call the emergency medical unit. And when I went to touch the phone, bah! Another explosion. The floor started to shake, and it gave you the sensation that it was an earthquake because it was shaking. So everybody went under the door frames. I said, no, we got to get out. So I basically took Mr. Felipe David, I put it on my shoulder because nobody wanted to touch him. And I started leading everybody because I knew the building very well. I worked there for 20 years and I knew the building with my eyes closed. I said, I know the best way to get out. So I led this whole group of 15 people down the ramp, all the way to the ramp that left towards the delivery of the building.
Yeah.
It was all the way up. I get them out. I put the guy on the ambulance, and I hear a plane hit the building. That's when I see the hole. I saw fire, and I saw debris falling down. Later on, I find out it wasn't debris. It was the people jumping out of the building. And it was horrible. So I started screaming, we got to go back, we got to go back. I went in 3 times getting people out of the basement. And that's when I found a police officer who said, Willie, do you have the key? He meant, did I have the master key? There were only 5 master keys at the World Trade Center. The people with the other 4 were trained to basically disaster management per se. They were the people trained to save people. And they ran away. And the 5th key, I had it. This is the key. They call it the key of hope, as you can see. And this key opened everything. And remember, those doors were steel doors. So I have to start basically leading the firemen floor by floor, opening the door so people will escape and save hundreds and hundreds of people because I went up 39th floor opening the doors. The firemen collapsed on the 27th floor because they couldn't continue. They had no strength. I continued because that was my job. I was in better physical condition than the firemen. I got, my legs were made of steel at that time because going up and down every day. And after I saved all these people, we hear an explosion on the 39th floor coming from the other tower. I think it was the collapse of the other tower. And inside of our tower, we hear pa, 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 an internal destruction, meaning that the 65th floor, because we lost 65 on the radio. We lost 65, meaning the 65th floor collapsed, pancaking all the way down to the 44th floor. And I am on the 39th floor. And I'm screaming, my friends, we got to go up. And nobody wanted to go up. So they told me to get out. I went to the 27th floor. I got a man on a wheelchair that was having an asthma attack. He was placed on a rescue gurney. And as I took him down with 3 firemen to the lobby, one of the firemen said, prepare the ambulance. And I went to prepare the ambulance on the main revolving doors that led to the building, and they were all destroyed. There was no revolving doors. And at that moment, I hear, don't look back, don't look back. The police is telling me not to look back. And when they tell you don't look back, what's the first thing that you do? You look back. And I turned around, and I saw the most horrible thing I ever seen in my life. I saw all the bodies of the people that jumped out of the building. Imagine a body falling 80 or 90 floors above you. It went out with such a force that they exploded on the floor. And then at that moment, I hear, run, run, run. There's nobody around me. That's why they call me the last man up. There was nobody around. And all of a sudden, I see a fire truck, parked in front of the revolving doors. I went under the fire truck, and the building, collapsing right on top of me. And I got buried alive until hours after, thanks to 2 television stations that were there filming. They said the last man out was on that section, and they started looking under the rubble, and I was pulled from under the rubble hours after.
I think one thing that I think is so incredible about your story is that you showed us that master key. You physically led firefighters up from the lower floors of the World Trade Center, floor by floor, saving people as you went along.
I guess that's one of the reasons probably that I'm alive, because God said, this guy is helping me, let me give him a second chance. And that's what happened, because my only thought at that time was that my friends. And it's incredible. They have made me national hero. They recognized me. They have called me Man of the Year in many events. They have given me amounts of recognitions. And I say, I am not a hero. I am a survivor. The heroes for me died on 9/11 trying to help other people.
Yeah.
Those are the people that never made it. I'm just a survivor that had the key, that was able to do things, but they recognized that I didn't have any training, and because I didn't have any training, I was able to do more than the same firemen. Yeah. I appreciate that, but I still have the survivor's guilt, because after saving so many people, the reality is that I never was able to save the people that I set out to save. My friends that were at Windows of the World, that was the restaurant that was located on the 106th and the 107th floor. I was never able to get there.
When you walk down the street past what used to be the World Trade Center today, how do you feel walking past that site?
Well, I was a member of the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation as a family advisory council. I represented the victims on the reconstruction of the area. So by obligation, I have to be there through the whole process. So I was able to heal myself being there. But I tell you something, they have done many interviews, and they tried to bring me to the area where I was pulled from the rubble. And every time I go there, I get chills. I start crying because I just recall the whole seconds after I went under the fire truck, and when they pulled me out, the exact position, and I relived the whole thing. This year was the first year that I said I'm not doing any interviews on Ground Zero because it's too painful. So I stayed away this year. Your family, on the day, have they told you about what was going through their mind when they realized what was unfolding? You see, the most important thing, 20 years after, that I analyzed, that I learned from that day, is that the most important thing in life is not the job that you have or the money that you make. It's your family and your friends. Your family, because I almost lost my mother of a heart attack. Imagine the pain of a mother knowing that she has a son inside the building. And she spoke to him minutes before she sees another plane going into the other building. And then she said, oh, I hope he's okay. Then the building collapsed. And she said, oh, I hope he's in the other building. And then the other building collapsed and doesn't hear from her son for hours. She almost died. So if it wasn't because that interview that I told you that went around the world, somebody saw it in Puerto Rico and called my mother, your son is alive. I saw him on the news. That's what saved her. And the second thing, the friends, the second most important thing, my friends, because on 9/11, I lost 200 friends. You know the emotional inventory of losing 200 friends? Oh my God, it's just devastating. It's devastating. So I made it into a mission to remind everybody about what happened on that day, because in America, they say never forget. But people want to forget. They don't want to remember this. And remember that we have a new generation of kids that were born after 9/11 that are 20 years old now. And they don't comprehend, they cannot digest the amount of absurdity that we live after 9/11, the loss of rights, the security levels that were raised, that they were never taken out, how they use 9/11 as a politic of fears, to create a political agenda that we did not agree with. We went into 2 wars, in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it's been a constant use of our tragedy. So you learn to handle it, you learn to digest it, but you don't overcome it.
Incredibly poignant conversation there with William Rodriguez, who claims to be the last person rescued from what was the incredible wreckage after 9/11. Of course, it's the 20th anniversary tomorrow.